Hey guys, how's it going? It's Andy from Go Investing. I am back after a long hiatus. It's taken me a while to really get used to the physical demands of working at my job. I'm working outside all day. I'm carrying a lot of things. I'm walking through some tough terrain. So it's pretty much when I get off of work, I'm exhausted and I go to sleep. So I'm trying to plan a little bit further ahead, and I've seen some really good opportunities in the stock market. So hopefully I have some analysis videos in the upcoming weeks about stocks that I'm really interested in. And I wanted to talk about one that has really caught my attention as being probably the best deal that I've seen in the stock market in a long time. When we see stocks that go on significant discounts, it's usually ones that have, some large allegations against them. Maybe they've been pushed up to a level that's not sustainable and they've sold off. But this is a stock that we're going to be talking about today with Alibaba, ticker symbol BABA, that I think is one of the best opportunities because one, it is, a tech giant. And I've been kind of picky in the past about expanding into international markets. I kind of think of this as a similar mindset to what I have with cryptocurrency. With cryptocurrency, I only want to buy stuff, specifically Bitcoin and potentially Ethereum, stuff that I really believe is going to stand the test of time because I want to pick the winner and I don't want to have to risk about buying some coin or in this case, some international company that maybe isn't as well established as something like an Alibaba. And so with Alibaba going on a significant discount, being down 50% from its highs in October of this past year, we have some great opportunities to look to see if Alibaba is an interesting play going forward. And with the kind of stability that I have with, having a new job that brings in some new income and the fact that they will match 3% of my income for a retirement contribution, I'm going to have some more opportunities to be buying additional stocks. And so with most stocks pretty much right now sitting at all-time highs or close to their all-time highs, I don't have a lot of other opportunities, and I think this is a great stock to talk about. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about what's happened to Alibaba in the past. It's pretty much been the past year that has really pushed the stock down from being one of the high flyers in the Chinese market to being something that some investors are kind of staying away from. And there's a really interesting dynamic between the Chinese government and Alibaba, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about kind of why I still feel bullish on it overall, and I'm going to talk about my entry points and kind of what I've seen on the charts as well. And so I'm going to give my overall opinions on Alibaba. This is not financial advice, and I'm very curious to see what you guys think about Alibaba or other potential Chinese stocks like Baidu or Tencent in the comment section down below, and let me know what stocks you guys would like to hear me give my analysis about in the future. So what's been happening with Alibaba stock? I'm going to put up the chart right now, and you can see that after a pretty solid run going from 2019 to 2020, it's fallen off pretty significantly. It's currently trading for $170 with highs around $317 back in October. So that is a pretty significant fall. 52-week low is down at $152, and the 52-week average price is $240. So if you look at some of the lagging indicators, stuff like the 50-day moving average or the 200, it's going to be significantly below that because it's been crushed pretty heavily in the past weeks and months. There are some people that want to wait for the golden cross, which is the movement of the 50-day moving average over the 200. It's called a golden cross, and it's usually a good buying signal. But I'm going to talk about some reasons later why I think the recent bounce off of the lows around the $150 mark has been something that I've charted out for a long time and I think is really attractive for a long-term play. And for it to reach those all-time highs, that is an upside of 87% from the current price. While this is not a prediction of where I think the stock will be in the future, I always like kind of looking at previous price points as kind of my realistic price targets, because when you get stocks that are at all-time highs, it's really difficult to kind of judge where it can possibly go. I really believe that stocks trade off of previous price movement. And when you have a stock like this that was at an all-time high, significantly above where we were, I think kind of keeping that in mind is having a realistic upside target of 87%. It's really hard to beat that. And so I don't think this is something that's going to happen in the next couple weeks, next couple months, or even the next year or so. But for a long-term investment, since this will be likely in my retirement account, I do like that as an upside. So let's talk about the 50% fall for Alibaba stock, because at the end of last year, Chinese stocks have been doing really well. You had a lot of stuff like Baidu, Tencent, and Alibaba, stuff that I'd really considered buying. And since that point, Alibaba has gotten into some hot waters, and it's kind of really pulled down the Chinese stocks overall. And so Alibaba is similar to Amazon in the fact that they have many fingers of their overall business. You have Amazon that has, the delivery stuff. They started as a book company. Now they're going into cloud service, stuff like that. And so one of their subsidiary companies, Ant, which is a financial company, was set to go IPO in October of this past year. And just a couple days before it went IPO, the Chinese regulators had them halt the IPO process on the Shanghai exchange. Obviously, this is a huge freak out because for a company like Alibaba, having one of the subsidiary companies go public is a huge source of income and revenue, because just that's how the IPO process works. And after the regulators come out and kind of squashed those hopes, Jack Ma spoke out about the Chinese Communist Party. And I don't want to have any talk about politics, but I'm just kind of giving the facts of what happened. Jack Ma comes out and talks about it. The Chinese government obviously does not like that, and they decide to investigate further into Chinese tech companies, talking about stuff like monopolies, which is really not something we've heard the Chinese government talk about a lot in the past. We have heard a lot of stuff about American tech companies being investigated for for monopolistic practices, but hearing from the Chinese government, is very different from what we've heard. And kind of the gist of what's happening is that the Chinese government wants more control over some of these large tech companies, and they're worried that these companies are becoming large enough where they can't compete with the Chinese government for control. And so you have some fines and some potential regulations in the future about listing, and that's pushed a lot of the Chinese stocks down. And so at one point, Jack Ma, who was the former CEO of the company, he's one of the co-founders, disappeared for a couple months. And it was very interesting to see what was happening there. He has since popped back up, and it appears like he's okay, but the Chinese government coming down on the tech companies is definitely a huge risk going forward with this stock. And I think that's one of the huge things that's pushed these stocks down and has a lot of investors worried. You've had some large names in the investing community buying back in, I think it was April or June. And since that point, the stock has continued to fall. And I think now is a very interesting place to consider buying Alibaba. And I'm going to talk about why in a little bit, but the last thing that's kind of pushed it down recently is from their recent earnings report in August. They had a miss on revenue, and that's kind of worried investors. So that's the gist of what's happened recently, why the stock's down 50% from its all-time highs. Now I want to make my bull case for why I think Alibaba is an interesting investment opportunity going forward. Probably the biggest bull case for it is Alibaba is incredibly reliable. I'm going to put up the revenue chart right now, and you can see that it's been incredibly steady and has seen explosive growth over the past couple years. When I'm buying a company that, has been hit pretty hard recently, I want to see that, it's not a huge problem with their overall business. It's some external factors. In this sense, I think Alibaba's business is relatively safe. You see incredible gains for the revenue. I'll put up the net income, and that has continued to go up as well. And they kind of have a similar trajectory to something like an Amazon. I'll put up their revenue sources right now. Their e-commerce is definitely the largest part of their business, making up around 66% of their revenue sources. But their cloud computing is very similar to what we've seen with some of the targets for an Amazon with their AWS, where pretty much every earnings report that comes out, that's the number that people are looking at for future growth of Amazon. And it's kind of the same thing that we've been seeing with Alibaba going forward. And so one of the most interesting things to me right now about Alibaba is that it had a very nice bounce off of a support that I drew around the $165 mark. And so this was something that I drew back probably in 2019, 2020. My favorite thing about charting is that I can go back and look at these companies. I haven't looked at Alibaba in months, but a lot of the charting that I've put in the past is now becoming very useful. So I'll put up on the screen right now kind of what that chart looks like. And even though it did break below that support, when I kind of zoom in onto a smaller time scale, you can see that it has kind of respected that support. Does this mean that it will stop falling? No, but I think it's an interesting entry point. And based off of that upside of the 85% from the previous highs, around 317, there's a bull case to be made there. I don't know if now is the perfect time for me to be buying in, but it's definitely on my radar. In this upcoming week, I kind of want to see how it's trading to see if that support holds or if it's going to continue to fall, because below that, I could see it falling down to like the $130 mark, because I think that's a pretty decent support as well. But it's not very often that you get a giant tech company at this amount of a discount. You've seen some stuff recently. You could argue that Disney is kind of a tech company with their switch to the digital marketplace, but you don't see companies that are this large and well-established falling 50% in a couple months. And so that's why I think it's always interesting to kind of look at companies that, maybe people are kind of fearful right now, and try to make your own judgment on whether or not it could be an interesting opportunity going forward. So as of right now, Alibaba is definitely near the top of my list at good opportunities. Obviously, plenty of risk with the Chinese government. You don't have a lot of transparency with that government about kind of what they're going to be doing going forward. But I think the reach of something like an Alibaba will make them resilient to whatever type of punishment or regulations go into place. And so this is always going to be something that can change, in an instant. But as of right now, I think Alibaba, for a small position in my portfolio, gives me some nice exposure to the Chinese and international markets, and has a fantastic upside of 86%. To the recent all-time highs around $317, $319. So let me know what you guys think about Alibaba as a potential buying opportunity. Do you think it's going to continue to fall further, or do you think it's a stock that you're not going to want to touch with a 10-foot pole just because of the risks of the Chinese regulations? Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.